Have you ever wondered why the more you unconditionally give to a man, the more he seemingly pulls away? You pour your entire heart into being the perfect, fiercely loyal and endlessly understanding partner, yet you frequently find yourself entirely taken for granted, anxiously waiting for a text message that never arrives. What if I told you that the secret to becoming utterly unforgettable lies not in doing more, but in gracefully stepping back and doing profoundly less? Today, we are dismantling the great myth of the good girl and exploring the deeply misunderstood power of the dark feminine. It is not about petty manipulation or toxic revenge. It is about the absolute magnetic sovereignty of detachment. If you are utterly exhausted by shrinking your standards just to keep the peace, and wish to understand how this energetic shift completely rewrites male psychology, you must drop everything and listen closely. By the end of this video, you will never politely tolerate emotional crumbs again. Welcome to Destiny's Decree. The phrase dark feminine has been terribly misunderstood of late, often reduced to a rather cheap caricature of a ruthless villainess manipulating men for sport. You might have seen this aesthetic romanticized across the internet, leading you to believe that to reclaim your power, you must become cold, vindictive, or entirely heartless. However, as a high-value woman, you must understand that true dark feminine energy has absolutely nothing to do with malice or superficial toxicity. It is, in fact, a deeply sacred integration of your own shadow, the parts of you that society quietly taught you to suppress in order to remain perfectly agreeable. It is the awakening of the underworld goddess within, the woman who completely understands her inherent worth and possesses absolutely zero fear of walking away from that which no longer serves her. To actively embody this energy is to master the absolute art of detachment, firmly rooting yourself in a reality where a man's presence is merely a complement to your magnificent life, never the foundation of it. When you operate from this sovereign space, you naturally establish ruthless boundaries without ever needing to raise your voice or draft exhausting emotional paragraphs. You simply observe his behavior, and if it falls short of your standard, you gracefully withdraw your access with the quiet elegance of a queen firmly closing the palace doors. It is never about punishing him, it is about fiercely protecting your own peace and refusing to compromise your dignity for fleeting, inconsistent validation. This unwavering self-respect creates an invisible magnetic pull that men find utterly intoxicating, precisely because your attention cannot be easily conquered. Yet fully embracing this profound sovereignty requires you to dismantle the very conditioning you have likely been fed since childhood. For far too long, you have probably operated under the exhausting assumption that to be truly loved and chosen, you must constantly accommodate, endlessly nurture, and tirelessly forgive the men who take your grace for granted. You have been taught to shrink your own standards just to keep the peace, pouring your precious energy into a bottomless well of unreciprocated effort. Shedding this profound fear of abandonment is the true initiation into the dark feminine, preparing you to finally lay to rest a deeply ingrained habit that has been secretly destroying your romantic polarity from the very beginning. For decades, society has conditioned you to embody the archetype of the quintessential good girl, pushing you to operate almost exclusively within a rather imbalanced state of light feminine energy. You were quietly taught that to secure a man's devotion, you must be endlessly accommodating, painfully understanding, and always available to soothe his every emotional whim. This creates an exhausting dynamic where you function more like a maternal figure or an unpaid therapist rather than a deeply desired romantic partner. You bend over backwards, silencing your own needs to ensure he feels perfectly comfortable, mistakenly believing that this unwavering loyalty will eventually be rewarded with absolute fairy tale commitment. However, from the unforgiving perspective of male psychology, this excessive maternal compliance is very often the exact reason why he pulled away just when you were giving him your absolute best. When a man realizes that he possesses your unconditional, unwavering support regardless of his actual effort, the primal thrill of the chase entirely dissipates into thin air. He becomes incredibly comfortable with your presence, easily taking your endless forgiveness for granted, yet he rarely feels that gripping, visceral spark of emotional attraction. The brutal reality is that men do not obsess over women who are too afraid to lose them. They respect and fiercely pursue the women who possess the courage to walk away. This is where the definitive death of the good girl syndrome becomes your greatest awakening as a high-value woman. Stepping into the darker, more sovereign aspects of your divine feminine means you are no longer terrified of displeasing a man in order to fiercely protect your own internal peace. You stop over-explaining your boundaries and simply enforce them, allowing him to feel the cold, sudden reality of your absence if he dares to cross a line. When you finally stop handing him your undivided attention on a silver platter, you introduce a fascinating new element into the dynamic that completely short-circuits his expectations. This elegant refusal to over-communicate leads us directly into the most intoxicating weapon in your arsenal, an invisible force that absolutely commands his total focus. One of the most common mistakes modern women make is believing that constant communication and availability build intimacy, when in reality, oversharing is often the silent killer of emotional attraction. When you detail every aspect of your day, your feelings, and your plans to a man, you leave absolutely no room for his imagination to actively wander in your direction. The divine feminine, in its darker and more magnetic aspect, understands the profound power of silence and the irresistible allure of the unknown. A high-value woman does not feel a desperate, anxious need to broadcast her every move or constantly reassure a man of her unwavering devotion. By elegantly holding back and maintaining a sense of poised mystery, you force his mind to actively engage, leaving him to wonder what you are doing, who you are with, and why you are no longer seeking his validation. This is precisely where the true application of the no-contact rule shifts from a mere dating tactic into a masterclass in male psychology. When you stop announcing your intentions and simply execute them in silence, you become beautifully unpredictable, a puzzle he cannot simply solve and cast aside. He is accustomed to women who send emotional paragraphs detailing their pain or demanding explanations as to why he pulled away in the first place. When you respond to his sudden withdrawal with absolute, unbothered silence instead, you create a massive psychological vacuum in his mind. He is biologically wired to try and fill that empty space, resulting in constant obsessive thoughts as he attempts to decode this sudden, quiet strength you are displaying. Operating in this silent, mysterious frequency completely shifts the power dynamic without you ever having to utter a single syllable of protest or demand. You instantly transform from the anxious pursuer waiting by the phone into the elusive, high-status prize that requires his utmost effort and mental bandwidth to secure. This level of elegant unpredictability commands a type of profound respect that words and arguments could never possibly achieve. However, merely staying quiet on the outside is not quite enough if your internal energy is still frantically tied to his potential reaction. To truly weaponize this silent magnetism, you must fundamentally alter the way you perceive the connection itself, stepping into a powerful energetic realm where his absence no longer holds you hostage. To truly master this darker, more magnetic aspect of your energy, one must understand the profound alchemy behind the law of detachment. When you desperately cling to a man, terrified of losing his affection, you actively broadcast a frequency of sheer scarcity that ironically repels the very love you seek. However, the moment you genuinely accept the possibility of a life without him, completely devoid of panic or despair, a massive energetic shift occurs within your reality. You sever the invisible umbilical cord of anxious necessity, signaling to the world that you are entirely complete on your own terms. This profound detachment is not a cold absence of love, it is the absolute absence of fear, which is the undeniable hallmark of a true high-value woman. Within the intricate web of male psychology, a man can always subconsciously feel when this energetic cord has been definitively cut, even from a great distance. The moment you stop obsessively checking your phone and redirect your powerful divine feminine energy back into the cultivation of your own spectacular life, he feels the sudden chilling drop in your pursuit. He realizes, often with a sharp jolt of anxiety, that your world has continued to spin beautifully without his constant validation. This invisible inversion of polarity is precisely what triggers his deepest instincts to chase, effectively countering the very reasons why he pulled away initially. He is no longer dealing with an anxious girl waiting for permission to breathe, but a sovereign queen who breathes on her own. By mastering this emotional alchemy, you ensure that your personal joy is no longer held hostage by his inconsistent behavior or unpredictable silences. You stop radiating the exhausting energy of someone desperately waiting to be chosen, and instead radiate the magnetic certainty of a woman who holds the ultimate power of choice. This powerful, energetic upgrade completely rewires his perception of your worth, building an intense emotional attraction as he becomes acutely aware that you could easily slip through his fingers. Yet achieving this state of inner peace is merely the preparation phase. The true test of your newfound sovereignty arrives when he inevitably attempts to step back into your fiercely protected realm. Embodying this darker magnetic frequency ultimately culminates in the adoption of an unbreakable sovereign posture. As a high-value woman, you absolutely refuse to lower yourself to the exhausting behaviors of begging for clarity, investigating his social media, or graciously accepting half-hearted apologies. You have fully anchored yourself within your divine feminine power, deeply understanding that your continued presence is an elite privilege, never a basic right to be taken for granted. You simply observe his actions from a place of calm, untouchable detachment, knowing that a man's true intentions are always revealed through consistent, undeniable effort, rather than empty, fleeting promises. When he inevitably attempts to re-enter your life, your response must be fiercely dictated by this newly established sovereignty. If he offers only emotional breadcrumbs or shallow, fragile excuses as to why he pulled away, you do not reward him with instant access or enthusiastic paragraphs of forgiveness. Within the unforgiving realm of male psychology, rewarding low effort instantly kills any lingering emotional attraction and signals that your boundaries are merely temporary suggestions. Instead, you hold your ground with polite, regal indifference, forcing him to realize that to exist in your fiercely protected orbit, he must radically elevate his standard of behavior. This is the true, lasting victory of the no-contact rule. It beautifully transforms from a temporary survival strategy into a permanent, unshakable state of being. You become the elusive, high-status prize that fundamentally demands deep respect, making it painfully clear that you are perfectly willing to walk away forever if he fails to step up and claim you properly. By refusing to ever settle for anything less than absolute certainty, you secure a romantic dynamic built on profound admiration rather than anxious, fearful attachment. This majestic internal transformation entirely changes the way the world perceives your worth, bringing us to the undeniable final truth about your ultimate power. Ultimately, my dear, stepping into the profound power of your dark feminine energy is never an act of malice against a man. It is the ultimate, magnificent declaration of your own self-worth. When you finally release the exhausting burden of the good girl syndrome, you do not just change the way he views you, you fundamentally elevate the way you view yourself. Now, I have a rather vital question for you. What is the one boundary you have been terrified to enforce, but are finally going to elegantly establish today? Leave your answer in the comments below. As always, I read every single one. If this counsel has awakened the sovereign queen within you, ensure you subscribe to Destiny's Decree and ring the notification bell. We have much more to uncover together. Until next time, stay anchored in your power and stay utterly magnificent.